leaked phone call, backroom coaching, a peace deal that may tilt the war. Welcome to the next phase of Ukraine's fate. In October, a secret call between U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov was leaked, and what we heard shakes the ground rules of the conflict. The leaked transcript reveals a detailed strategy session with advisor Jason Witkoff coaching Kremlin officials on how to present a peace proposal directly to President Donald J. Trump. The guidance is explicitly political, urging Moscow to frame the offer in terms that would appeal to Trump personally. Witkoff suggests beginning by praising the president's recent Gaza ceasefire achievement, a move designed to flatter his self-perception as a master deal-maker. This initial flattery, the transcript suggests, would create a more receptive environment for Russia's core pitch, positioning it not as a concession, but as another historic win for the Trump administration. At the heart of the proposal is a comprehensive 28-point plan. The terms are severe for Kyiv. They would require Ukraine to formally cede all claims to significant territories in the Donbas region and Crimea, effectively recognizing Russian annexation. Furthermore, the plan demands Ukraine permanently abandon its aspirations to join the NATO alliance, a cornerstone of its foreign policy. Militarily, Kyiv would have to accept strict, verifiable caps on the size and capabilities of its armed forces. A particularly unusual clause stipulates that any international funds for Ukraine's reconstruction would be jointly managed and shared with the United States. In the aftermath of the leak, Russia has publicly maintained its hardline stance, insisting that no major concessions are on the table. Officially, Moscow is dismissing the document's authenticity, warning that its release is a form of hybrid warfare deliberately designed by Western adversaries to sabotage any potential for genuine peace talks and sow discord. This isn't just diplomacy. It's a geopolitical pivot with far-reaching consequences. Ukraine is being squeezed between the brutal reality of war on the ground and the immense pressure of deal-making at the table. Across the continent, Europe is nervous, watching its eastern flank with growing apprehension. The U.S. is walking a precarious tightrope, balancing its support for Kyiv against the risks of direct escalation. And Russia? It might be smelling a strategic victory, one achieved not just with tanks and missiles, but through the intricate dance of international statecraft, potentially securing its core objectives without firing another shot. For Ukraine, the stakes are existential. To accept this plan in its current form could mean conceding territory and compromising its sovereignty, a bitter pill for a nation that has sacrificed so much. For the U.S., the optics of appearing to favor Russian red lines are perilous. Such a move could fracture long-standing alliances, particularly with Eastern European partners who see any concession as a threat to their own security. For Russia, this represents a potential masterstroke, achieving major strategic goals via negotiation, not just bullets. It would validate its hardline stance and reshape the European security architecture in its favor. Witkoff is slated to meet Putin in Moscow next week. Kyiv has rebuffed the original 28-point plan and is negotiating a slimmed 19-point version, but the deal-makers still face the red lines: territory, NATO, army size. Key moment: will Trump press Ukraine to sign before Europe realigns? Or will Kyiv hold the line until a fair deal is on the table? The war may pause, but the power play is accelerating. Across Europe, the leaked plan lands on a continent already navigating a complex geopolitical landscape. The reaction is predictably cautious, but far from uniform, revealing deep-seated divisions in how to approach the conflict's endgame. For frontline states like Poland and the Baltic nations, who share a border or a history with Russia, the proposal is met with deep skepticism. Their leaders publicly urge firmness, warning against any peace that rewards aggression or compromises Ukrainian sovereignty. Further west, in major EU capitals like Berlin, Paris, and Rome, the calculus is different. While committed to Ukraine, they are also carefully weighing the immense risks of a prolonged war against the potential instability of a fragile ceasefire. Economic pressures loom large, with persistent concerns over long-term energy stability and the high costs of weaning the continent off Russian resources. At the same time, security stability is paramount. A flawed peace could embolden Moscow and undermine the continent's collective defense posture, a risk NATO is unwilling to take. Amid these diverging perspectives, Brussels officially stresses the need for unity, insisting any path forward must be coordinated among all 27 member states and, crucially, led by Kyiv. Independent analysts echo the frontline states' fears, warning that any rushed terms could inadvertently lock in territorial gains and create a permanent state of insecurity along a volatile new border. The plan itself has evolved. Trump's original outline, sources say, prioritized an immediate ceasefire to force all parties to the negotiating table under intense pressure. However, the revised push appears to be a more nuanced version, reportedly developed after significant back-channel outreach to European allies and, critically, to officials in Kyiv. It now claims to have secured a preliminary Ukrainian sign-off on a much narrower framework for talks, a claim that remains publicly contested and unverified. This ambiguity leaves European capitals with fundamental questions, chief among them, who would guarantee compliance from all sides? And how would an enforcement mechanism actually work on the ground without escalating tensions further? While many details are still speculative, here is what's known about the framework so far. First, an immediate territorial freeze, halting combat along existing lines of contact pending comprehensive political talks. Second, strict limits on force deployments and heavy weaponry within a designated buffer zone near that line. Third, a pathway to NATO membership for Ukraine would be preserved, but explicitly sequenced and tied to reform milestones rather than being immediate. And fourth, a phased relief of sanctions on Russia, directly tied to independently verified withdrawals of troops and equipment from specified areas. However, the most critical elements, the specific maps defining territorial control, concrete caps on troop numbers, and a definitive timeline for implementation, all remain fluid, unconfirmed, and subject to negotiation. As ceasefire talk gains traction, global trade recalculates. Europe eyes relief from energy volatility, even as sanction regimes remain a bargaining lever. India, a major buyer of discounted Russian crude, weighs stability over shock, seeking predictable flows without triggering secondary sanctions, insurers, tankers payments. China hedges, maintaining discounted energy imports, protecting access to Western markets and finance. Any phased sanctions relief could lower freight insurance compliance costs. For Europe, a workable peace could temper price spikes, ease refinery margins, stabilize supply chains, leaders stress enforcement, so relief tracks verifiable withdrawals. Meanwhile, traders anticipate a corridor of monitored flows, capped volumes, audited payments, tight end-use rules to prevent sanctions evasion. Bottom line, a credible deal may soften trade frictions across India, China, and Europe, but only if sanctions relief is phased, conditional, and rigorously verified. Follow Seminal Affairs for the truth behind global power shifts, because when a war ends at the negotiating table, the map of the world changes forever.